Greetings, everyone. A long time ago, there were these two salesmen sometime who went down to a developing country. They were sent out to find if there were any opportunities for selling shoes, and naturally they wrote telegrams back to their company at home. The first salesman wrote, "Situation hopeless. Stop. They don't wear shoes." And the other salesman wrote, "Glorious opportunity. They don't have shoes yet." You and I were brought into this world having won the Avarian lottery. In other words, if what makes you the human being you are, whether your consciousness, your soul, or something entirely different, could have ended up manifesting in another person, in another part of the world, the opportunities you presently have and can create would be radically different. If someone on par with Einstein's intellectual curiosity was born, but in a developing part of the world, chances are that person would not realize their potential. But if this person was born in the US, for example, they would most likely achieve their potential and advance humankind in some way. And here we are. We're brought into this world beating all odds. Think about it. Out of the trillions of vast possibilities that could have occurred, you and I, we are the ones who are here right now. We're the ones who are breathing the air around us, feeling the sunlight on our skin, and being aware of the fact that we're alive. You know, some years back when I was 11 years old, there was one beautiful summer day which ended up being the catalyst to framing and refining my purpose as a sentient human being. We cherished every moment at my grandparents' home, and on our last day together, after hours of playing with my three younger cousins and getting our parents and aunts and uncles involved in the fun, our whole family was ready to feast. That evening, our conversation was a lot like a snowball rolling down a massive hill. From talking about the day and all the games we played, the topics we discussed ranged from what humankind would be like at the end of the 21st century to how future generations may venture out to colonize the solar system. That day, my optic of the world evolved profoundly. On the road trip back home with Mom and Dad, one thing alone was racing through my mind: our dinner conversation. I expanded upon all of what we discussed a step further. If we hypothetically had 7 billion people on almost all the planets, one way or another, with interplanetary communication possible, how many more revolutionary shapers and framers would we see each century? From the likes of Einstein, Da Vinci, Gandhi, spread throughout the centuries, with billions of more human beings, the number of humans eager to relentlessly accelerate and shape the world into an elevated place would have to rise enormously. I brought the optic back to Earth. Why were we seeing so few of these truly revolutionary people per century in our roughly 7.8 billion strong civilization? I did a lot of digging, and I came to see the main culprits for why we were seeing so few of these people, of why the Avarian lottery wasn't being won by people globally compared to the few major hotspots. Poverty, a lack of opportunity, and my little 11-year-old heart was broken into 1,000 pieces. And I knew that something had to be done about this. After researching the various ways people have been trying to eliminate this facet of our reality, I learned about the difference between giving a fish for dinner relative to teaching a person to fish for a lifetime of dinners. The moment I understood the awesome power of the latter, I understood the concept of microfinance. And before I dive in, I deeply hope you take everything I have to say and test it against your own values and personal compass, because I truly don't know any more about human existence than you do. And ultimately, we're all in the same boat of figuring out what in the universe all of this is. It's funny, almost all of us are brought into this world without a true overarching purpose. Unlike a film or a video game, we are the creators of our destiny and our life choices. And that day, I realized that I had to find a way to become the power to push the collective needle of humankind forward. Long story short, I came to personally embody a philosophy of life called optimistic nihilism. The universe in which you and I live within is going to die one day. Sure, in more years than our species and even the universe has currently existed, but it will happen. This includes us, the things that we've created, and possibly even the memory of you and me, which won't last 100,000 years from now. Who knows what the future holds? Nihilism states that if we are all fated to be forgotten and eliminated, what's the point? And that's where optimistic nihilism comes into play. Yes, the universe is certainly going to meet its end, and we likely share that fate. But that's okay. Why are we talking about the future when we are here in the now? We must first prioritize the fact that we are here right now, and certainly the fact that as being surrounded by fellow living beings in this world that we've created, we ought to give a purpose to ourselves. Because while the universe may not provide us with one, while we may just be a fluke in the entirety of the vast cosmos, it sure is a pretty reassuring thought that we are here, that we beat the odds against what surrounds us, and that we are here for each other. Personally, I came to value the idea of teaching a person how to fish relative to feeding them for one meal because of the incredible domino effect it has on bettering actual lives, the lives of people around them, and improving the condition of the entire area. One of the most profound moments during my experience in Sri Lanka for microfinance was when we were visiting an enclave, in other words, a village, to meet one family. Let's set the stage here. Mom, Dad, consultants, and I were about an hour, quarter of an hour, from any main roads, and we were traveling on a gravel road heading deeper in a jungle. As we got deeper and deeper into the enclave surrounding area, we opened the van's doors and hopped onto the gravel. With the sun shining on that humid afternoon, we were all walking towards what we can refer to as the Chief's Building. After chatting with the enclave's governing people, we began walking around to meet the families whom we could work with. And one family's story changed my perspective on what true relentless grit and a tenacity of living means. As we walked on the path leading through the neighborhood, we ended up taking in a relatively big clay house. As we were looking around, taking in the surroundings, a young woman and her little children walked from the other side of the path. We had the opportunity to talk with the family and hear their story, hear about what they were doing and what they dreamed of doing in the future. We learned from the mom how they've been living, I say this literally, from one clay shack to another. After having had enough, she and her husband decided to work and earn enough money to build a big one-room clay home for their family. They were also particularly proud of how they were getting relatively new material for the roof, asbestos, which is one of the most common roof materials used in hundreds upon thousands of similar enclaves. It also happens to be a toxic material that's outlawed in numerous countries, yet still cheap enough for human beings in more impoverished areas to use. However, before the couple got halfway to their financial goal of finishing their home, the lady's husband passed away due to a heart problem, even at his young age. Her laborious jobs were barely enough to maintain her children, and because of the couple's confidence in following through, they began the process of building their home. Because only the foundation and rudimentary walls of the home were built, with very flimsy temporary roofing, the newly widowed lady and her children had no true home. Sri Lanka is a tropical island, which means they get a lot of rain. With their entire roof missing, and the walls half done, with barely any money, and with children living in one room, often going hungry at night, we worked with the young lady by supporting her through our organization so she could learn a new craft to better sustain her family. We also taught her and people in similar circumstances the deadly nature of asbestos and how to prioritize health. And through the deep graciousness of a friend, the lady and her children were able to stay with the friends as she worked and learned. While I'm certainly only scratching the surface of her profound story, the good news is how she was on track to using better quality material for a roof, and how she kept working with the support of our organization and the people we put her in contact with to achieve her goal of creating a supportive and nurturing family and home environment for her children. We plan on returning to our microfinance work in Sri Lanka over the summer of 2020, which included seeing how our microloan was helping the young lady progress towards her outcome goal. And then came the coronavirus. There were really two general perspectives. One of a hopeless situation, how we were all locked away in our homes and forced to remain there. And the other one was of a glorious opportunity, how we finally had the time to make the most of being home together. 2020 has been without a doubt one of the most interesting years of the past decade. Not because of how much changed, but rather because of how much was unearthed regarding the condition of humanity as a whole. There has been much radicalization and polarization, but much of it is likely what we were either blissfully ignorant of or simply didn't pay attention to in terms of what's been unearthed. What I really find interesting about the entire year in retrospect is how it was a great representation of the phrase, "the grass is greener on the other side," situationally. While at school, some of us may be thinking about going home and being away from the hustle and bustle to relax. And after a few days of living the life during vacation, we still likely end up bored to some extent with our routines and days. Whether as human beings we accept and acknowledge its presence or not, I realized how I used to see the greener grass on the other side instead of nurture the grass I was standing on top of at any given time. My parents had a particularly important role in helping me maintain a healthy peace of mind. Sometimes, the grass may indeed be greener on the other side, but as a facet of the human condition, whether we like or dislike our present surroundings and circumstances, observe where you are and simply be where you are, because that moment will not be coming back. And as motivation, if one never experiences pain, he or she won't be able to experience the beautiful depth of joy. Ultimately, I came to realize far more deeply that the grass is greener where you are willing to nurture it. I'm not aware of how this year may have been for you. As of the time I'm writing this speech, I'm not sure how the rest of December will play out. What I can tell you is how I urge you to live your life with optimistic nihilism. Think deeply about the person you are, and then go out and create your why. Create your life mission, not just to stare at walls, thinking and ideating and critiquing, but rather to make a change in the world. As people, we have a free will to do as we please, frankly. I respect all of you for your potential to be good human beings, but I cannot respect the belief that anything goes. I urge you to value meaningful action over inaction. Value action over inaction because one day, whether that action is already meaningful or not, as much as it can be from a grander optic, you have the potential to create meaningful progress within the world. Get out of your seats. Take a hard look at what your ideal self would be thinking about you at this very moment, and think about what the best course of action will be for you. I can give you a hint about what's worked for me. Just start. You mustn't be afraid of the aftermath of your actions, because that can be dealt with when you get there. After all, decisions are made by those who show up. Of course, this certainly does not justify inflicting harm upon other beings or detracting from the collective progress of our entire species. Rather, start to add something. Additionally, the history books aren't always an accurate representation of value added. While people like Gandhi and Einstein are huge figures in the books, there are definitely many people who are either footnotes or entirely forgotten by humanity who shaped the world in some way. To illustrate that, the science teachers of Einstein aren't as recognized as he is. And if these people helped one person breathe easier in some way, metaphorically or otherwise, they're a hero in my book. So get out there. Envision what your future and ideal self would think about you at this very moment. And be the person who you would be proud of being. Make the most of the opportunities that you are given and that you can create. You know, our lives are a lot like rocket ships. We spend all these years cultivating ourselves into a better human being and hopefully trying to create the people around us to be successful. With the big if of whether we go through our early years and our educational process successfully. During these particularly formative years, we utilize the countless inputs from our parents and family, teachers and counselors, and other external factors and people to mold the person who we become. Through the rocket analogy, I deeply believe that the sky isn't the limit, but the beginning. If you are willing to start today, to consciously fuel the fire, to cultivate your best life well lived possible today, I guarantee you that the world will be better off with your contribution. Whether you believe the world is truly positive sum or not, you hold the power to frame it into a positive sum place. And ultimately to you, whoever might be on the other side of the screen, I know you are capable of human greatness. Because the sky is just the beginning for all of us. Value meaningful action over any inaction. We must also talk about the hard questions in life that lead to positive progress. Think back on your life as a whole, on everything you've done, the person you are, the accomplishments you've achieved, your ambitions and your ideas. Right now, reflect introspectively. Are you proud of what you've done in your life? Has your life given you something to be proud of that if you were to pass away tomorrow, you would be proud of yourself? If someone near to you shared your story, would that person say, hey, he or she did something good in our world? Can you look upon your life and be proud of it? Can you? For many of you, I understand this may surface some strange feelings inside if you've reflected meaningfully. Personally, I prefer to look at these feelings as a glorious opportunity. This can give you a tremendous surge in motivation. Power it. Use it. Make future you proud of who you are now. Because you're alive, and whether you believe it or not, you've won the ovarian lottery. Whether you admire the fact that you're here at this school, or whether you admire what you've done with your life thus far. What are you doing? Not rushing to your dreams and biggest ambitions like you are on fire. Our time is limited, and we can only do so much. The inputs you put in can equal your outputs. You simply must take the step and start. Because this is your one life. There's a story I've come to cherish which reminds me of the lessons from the Situation Hopeless Salesman and the Glorious Opportunity Salesman. Some time back, there was this gentleman on a plane sitting next to Einstein. So Einstein says to this gentleman that, look, it's a long flight ahead of us, and why don't we have a friendly competition? I'll ask you a question, and if you can't answer it, you give me $5. Then you can ask me a question, and if I can't answer it, says Einstein, I'll pay you $500. The gentleman sitting next to Einstein's thinking, wow, what a great deal. $5, $500? So he tells Einstein, all right, go for it. Einstein asks the man, how far is the moon from Earth? And the gentleman sits there thinking and thinking. And he said to Einstein, you know, I really don't have the exact answer. So here's $5. Then he stared into Einstein's eyes and he asked him, what goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4? And Einstein sits there, working through all this scientific knowledge and wisdom, trying to work out all of the different possibilities. And he just couldn't figure it out. So he reaches into his pocket and gives the gentleman $500. Einstein's turn again. Einstein said, "Before I ask you my next question, what does go up a hill with 3 legs and come down with 4? And the gentleman looks into Einstein's eyes, puts his hand in his pocket, and gives Einstein $5. I'm deeply grateful for your attention to my talk today. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday Season, as well as a Happy New Year. And peace and good health to you during these times and far beyond."